Ladies and gentlemen, we have a very special guest returning to the podcast for at least the third time, might be more than that, where he's here to do a deep dive into the 2022 college football season with us. I say it all the time. This guy has forgotten more about college football than me or Zach probably know. He is the host of the TNT College Football Podcast, which you can find on Facebook. You can also find him on Twitter at TNT College Foot 1 or his page at Coach _B Will. Ladies and gentlemen, our own football guy, Bobby Wilson. Bobby, how are you doing, my man?
Good, buddy. Thanks for having me back on. I always love joining you guys, talking football and everything else.
Hey, we don't have you on enough, if we're being honest. I mean,
well, that means it's a good time of year because we have football.
Exactly.
So we have to be happy.
Absolutely.
You said it, man. We're right on the precipice here. The season's starting here soon. But yeah, man, it's one of those things. Like, before we get into the questions, Bobby did a breakdown of you still got a couple left, right?
Under 20. I'm getting there.
Under 20. So he does a breakdown of every single Division I college football team in the United States. This is do you remember what day you started your breakdowns on?
It was the middle of June. I don't remember the exact date, but it'll be just over 2 months though of doing it. You can see the bags under my eyes. That's why.
Yeah. No, you've been doing this for 2 months straight. You get a little bit of leeway. So.
Yeah, because we were talking about it before. I told Boomy that I love watching college football, but I don't really get into it beforehand like you and him kind of do. Because of that fact of there are how many different teams in there. And I don't know if it's the patience or the brain capacity to have that much information. I just like to watch the game and listen to what you guys have to say.
There's 131 teams now with James Madison joining this year. And next year there'll be 133 with Sam Houston State and Jacksonville State joining. So, I mean, it's a task, that's for sure. I mean, I'd be lying if I said that it isn't tiresome, but I'd love to do it.
Hey, that's all that matters, man.
Well, let's get right into it. Will anyone not named Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, or Clemson be in the college football Final Four this year?
Absolutely. I really believe so. I mean, I think Alabama and Ohio State are shoo-ins. I mean, Alabama has the two best players in college football in Will Anderson Jr. and Bryce Young, the returning Heisman candidate. Ohio State has an absolute stud at quarterback and CJ Stroud. So, I mean, those two teams are the top level teams. I look at outside of, I think Georgia is going to be very good. Clemson is very hard to predict going into this season, just because of how last season went. I think their quarterback, DJ Uiagalelei, is very, very inconsistent. They have a young freshman quarterback, Klubnik, coming in who could be special. I think he's got that Trevor Lawrence ability to like transcend that position. I don't know if he'll play this year. Cade Klubnik is his name. I don't know how much he'll play this year. If he plays this year, I mean, I personally think he should. I think he's that good, but time will tell. I think DJ Uiagalelei will be the number one guy to start, and then we'll see how it goes. But I think personally, teams that I look at, I think Utah returns a ton. They're going to be really, really good. I think
late night games always fun to watch.
Yeah. The one thing I question about Utah is they lost two stud linebackers. So they got to fill that, but I think they'll be able to handle it. Another team that a lot of people are talking about, I am hesitant on, is North Carolina State. They return almost more than anybody in college football, from like a skill player's perspective and defensive perspective. But I always feel NC State underperforms when they have a lot of pressure on them. And this year they obviously have a lot of pressure. So I think that could be an issue for them. When you look at the Pac-12, that, like,
always seems to perform better when like no one's talking about them.
That's a good question. I usually think Auburn is that type of team when nobody talks about them, they play better, but they're going to be lucky to make a bowl game this year with the roster that they have and the internal issues that they have, let alone. But that could be a whole
SEC schedule.
That could be a whole podcast episode in itself, the mess that they have going on there. But yeah, I mean, I would look at Utah and probably NC State. I mean, the AP poll just came out today. I think that there's a handful of teams in the top 10 that are very overrated. One team that I would look at from the Big 12 being Baylor. I think Baylor could be one of those teams that gets in if they're able to run the table. I think Dave Aranda, their head coach, is one of the best head coaches in college football that not a lot of people know about. Another one that some people are talking about a little bit is Miami, with Mario Cristobal in charge, but I think they're a year or two away. Once he brings in the recruiting classes that he's going to be able to bring in, I think Miami's going to be right up there with Alabama and Ohio State.
Wait, before we go any further, you said some names of some players who you probably know or whatever. I would like to know, I don't know if you can even answer this. How many college football players' names do you know?
Oh man.
Because, I mean, how many is there on a team? 50-something?
80-something.
80
to 100 guys on each team.
Oh, my goodness.
I'm not a math guy, but that's like tens of thousands of guys.
I mean, I can't put a number on it, but can we do an infinity symbol?
Yeah, I mean, I think we'd have to.
Well, yeah, because every year it's going to change. There's going to be players added, and there's going to be some players taken away, but there's always going to be more players added that you're going to have to know. Mm-hmm. I couldn't even think about how many.
And also, can we talk about the absolute nailing of Ujay?
Yeah,
what was it? The guy, the kid from Clemson. How many times have you practiced that name, Bobby?
Well, I had an episode early on in the podcast where I interviewed somebody from Clemson. So I learned it very quickly, so I didn't screw it up then.
That's genius level stuff. Like, go to the source so you get it right. I respect that.
And I asked before we went on the show, I'm like, how do you pronounce his name? And he's like, DJ Uga Ungale. I'm like, okay, let me repeat this like 5 times.
We're going to run this episode back like 9 times when the football season starts, just so we can get this pronunciation.
Yeah. I'm not even going to get it. I'm not going to get that.
I don't know if we ever will. Last year we saw Cincinnati kind of make that, dark horse run. I mean, not really a dark horse, but that is, the, out of the Power 5 conferences. Who do you see being that dark horse this year, maybe coming out of one of those smaller level conferences that maybe having a say come December on who should be in that Final Four?
I don't want to toot my own horn, but I did predict Cincinnati to go to the college football playoff last year. So
on this show too, I think
I will give myself a little bit of credit there. But I gotta say that I think Cincinnati is the best G5 team still. I really believe that. They have so much talent on that roster. Ben Bryant was the quarterback last year at Eastern Michigan. He transferred to Eastern Michigan from Cincinnati. Now he's going back to Cincinnati. I think he's going to be the guy from the get-go. I saw him play in person twice last year against Northern Illinois and against Western Michigan, and I really like him as a quarterback. Cincinnati's schedule, they start off the season at Arkansas. If they're able to win that game, it's going to propel them into what could potentially be another one of those type of runs. The AAC is much better this year than it has been in the past. They're like UCF's good. Houston's going to be very good. East Carolina's much improved. Tulsa's good. Tulane is going to be better. USF's going to be better. So, I mean, that conference is going to be a lot better. So they're going to be tested week in, week out more than what people think. Like I said, if they're able
to get the chance to do this when they lost Sauce Gardner, Desmond Ritter. I mean, some of their biggest names, even going down the list, of all the guys that they lost in the draft, that they're, even in this conversation that, like you said, start off week 1 and then,
that's going to help recruiting the next year.
100%.
So, it kind of makes sense though.
Yeah.
Just because,
and they're about to move to the Big 12 as well.
That's right. Is this their last year in the AAC?
It's their last year. Yep.
Oh,
yep.
Wow.
Take advantage of that.
Right. And if you ask me to like pick another team outside of that, I mean, I think Houston has an opportunity as well. They have a good schedule that kind of sets up for them to make a run too. But I think BYU, they're not necessarily a G5. They're independent, about to move to the Big 12, but their schedule is a gauntlet. If they're able to win out in that schedule, they absolutely deserve to be in the college football playoff. But I'm a big proponent and Boomy, you know this, of the Sun Belt Conference. And the new look Sun Belt East Conference is going to be a week in, week out gauntlet with the likes of Coastal Carolina, App State, Marshall. You're going to have Old Dominion, JMU, and Georgia State. So, I mean, if you're able to win out against it, you would have to beat the likes of, like, I'm going to use Coastal Carolina as an example because they're a team that I love and I follow, but they would have to beat App State, Georgia State, and Marshall, and then beat Louisiana in the conference championship game. I think if you're able to run the table at that level, I mean, obviously it's going to be a lot harder to say, does an undefeated Coastal Carolina, undefeated App State. Now, App State plays at Texas A&M and they host North Carolina. So, I mean, if App State goes undefeated, they definitely have an argument.
Right.
But
bringing in those
but
big
I mean,
dogs.
A team at that level, you have to go undefeated and you would have to do it probably convincingly. But I mean, the Sun Belt East is going to be very, very good.
Yeah, and like you said, it all kind of just shakes out on like how, teams at the top of the SEC do and how the teams at the top of the Big Ten. Like if there's a bunch of undefeated teams, sitting at the top of those divisions, then you're probably not going to see, the Coastal Care. Obviously, it'll all get shaken down in the the conference championships and stuff. But if you've got a bunch of one-loss teams at the top of the SEC, or 1 to 2 loss teams in the top of the SEC, the Big Ten, Pac-10 to an extent, Big 12, then yeah, absolutely, that conference has set themselves up really well with all the expansion going on. Some dogs in that conference. There's no doubt about that.
Absolutely.
You were saying that you thought there were some bad teams maybe in the top 10, but who is ranked in the top 25 that you think will flop and have a bad year?
Well, I first will say Texas A&M ranked at 6th. I'm never sold on Texas A&M. They always go 8-4. So I mean, they'll just do it again. That's what they always do.
They're all Texas A&M, so I'm happy to hear that.
But they had a really good recruiting class, weird. Right?
Yeah, well, I mean, Jimbo Fisher.
Well, yeah, the NIL deals, but
they paid a lot of money for that recruiting class, so they did a good job with that. But time will tell. I mean, the issue for A&M is they don't know who their quarterback is. And I'm sorry, if you're in the SEC and you don't know who your quarterback is, then, I mean, I don't know how good you're going to do. I mean,
yeah, that's tough.
You have guys in the SEC like Bryce Young and KJ Jefferson at Arkansas and Stetson Bennett at Georgia, Will Levis at Kentucky, Hendon Hooker at Tennessee. I mean, there's dudes in that conference. So it's like if you don't have a number one guy, if you're not sold on a number one guy, like you got problems. And I know that they got the transfer from LSU coming in, that's probably going to be their guy, but they haven't named a starter yet.
That's why we're so close to the season. They haven't named a starter.
Some other teams in that top 10 that I'm not sold on are Notre Dame. I think Notre Dame just got ranked number 5.
We hate Notre Dame here
because they're playing Ohio State week 1, and ESPN and ABC just want a top 5 game to make it look good. And then when Ohio State beats them by 30, everybody's like, okay, they're not as good as we thought. So Notre Dame's going to fall by the wayside real quickly. I think they can lose to USC. I mean, Notre Dame has a brand new quarterback. They got new running backs. Like they got a lot of new faces. So I mean, I love their new head coach and Marcus Freeman. I think he's going to do great there. I think the players love him, and he's got that persona and the swagger that kids like. But it's just going to take some time. So I mean, to put them in the top 5 is kind of crazy to me. And then I think Oklahoma could struggle a little bit this year. I think the Big 12 has gotten a lot better. Baylor's really good. Oklahoma State's good. I think Kansas State is one of the sleepers in college football this year. I think Oklahoma could go 8-4, 7-5, just with a new coach and some new things going on there that could they're ranked in the top 10 as well. So I mean, that's what I look at just at a quick glance, looking at those three teams there. And I mean, Clemson is another one, kind of like what I said earlier. You don't know how it's going to go.
Oh, for sure. I think that there's going to be a lot of those, those first couple of weeks, like you said, are always interesting, who kind of weeds themselves out, especially with some of those bigger early season matchups. And we've been we're not big Notre Dame fans.
Mhm.
So we don't mind hearing that. Now before I get to my next question, you glossed over a team ranked number 8 in the AP top 25. How are your Wolverines looking?
Well, Boomy, you know that I'm not a Jim Harbaugh fan at all. So I will say that my Michigan football fandom has kind of fallen by the wayside, just because of how much I dislike him as a
Have you
coach.
moved across to being a Mel Tucker guy then?
I love Mel Tucker. I do love Mel Tucker. I'm not going to root for Michigan State. I will support their fans and support the fan base, but I've talked to many Michigan fans, and there's a lot of Michigan fans who are just like, man, that guy is awesome. I wish we had him. But it's only a matter of time before they turn into something special there. I mean, he is an unbelievable coach. I actually have a theory that he is going to be the next head coach at Alabama after Nick Saban leaves.
Ooh.
But that's just my opinion. I mean,
will that ever happen?
Just think, what?
Will he ever actually leave?
I think Nick Saban's going to die on the sideline at some point. He's going to coach till he's 93.
That's very possible. I agree with that. He's going to have the
Isn't
Joe
he like
Paterno.
75 years old?
He's in his 70s. I do know that.
Yeah.
You can't walk away from that money, though.
That's fair. That's fair.
No,
Yeah,
Mel Tucker was on his coaching staff before at Alabama. So there's the connection there.
Interesting. So you talked about it a little bit earlier, some of the bigger names in college football. Will anyone not named CJ Stroud or Bryce Young win the Heisman this year? Those are obviously the two picks. I know you mentioned the other kid from Alabama. He's ranked pretty highly there. But do you realistically think that anybody outside of those two quarterbacks are going to walk home with the Heisman this year?
Will Anderson Jr. from Alabama should win the Heisman. He should have won it last year.
He'll be the first overall pick too, right?
Absolutely. He had 17 and a half sacks last season and 34 and a half tackles for loss. I mean, there's teams that don't even do that. Vanderbilt last year as a team had 9 sacks. Will Anderson Jr. had 17 and a half. So that young man is a freak of nature. He is an absolute.
It's not a
freak.
Great comparison, though. Vanderbilt's one of the worst teams in college football, though.
Yes,
but I get what you're saying.
But it's still unbelievable.
That is insane.
I think Alabama. I hate to continue to go down the Alabama route, but Alabama has a running back transfer from Georgia Tech and Jamar Gibbs, who a lot of people don't know a ton about. He was the ACC Freshman of the Year 2 years ago. He is an absolute blur with the football. I mean, he is so fast. And in that Alabama offense, he is going to be scary. So, I mean, I think when you're the running back at Alabama, you obviously get vaulted up the list because of how much you're going to get used. And he's electric. If we're looking at other guys, this is just a little bit of personal bias, but also because he is fantastic. I have to throw Grayson Mccall in there because he is the most accurate quarterback in college football. He had the highest accurate completion percentage last year. His efficiency was the highest. I believe it was the highest ever in college football history. So, I mean, he's unbelievable. And I understand he plays at Coastal Carolina and in the Sun Belt, and he probably won't get invited, but in my opinion, he has to be on the list just because of how efficient he is. Two other running backs who I would throw on there are Bijan Robinson from Texas and Deuce Vaughn from Kansas State. Just both electric runners, just can do so many things. If you're going with a wide receiver, I'd say Jackson Smith and Jigba from Ohio State. He might be the best wide receiver that they've ever had come out of there. And I know that's saying something with the guys that they've had. And I guess you would have to throw Jordan Addison because he was the Blitnikoff Award winner last year at Pitt. Now he's at USC. Caleb Williams at USC could put up some amazing numbers. I mean, you could throw him in there too. But, I mean, like you said, it is definitely a definitive race between Bryce Young and CJ Stroud. But I think there are other guys that, like I said, I think Will Anderson should be the guy. But I think we all know that a defensive player will probably never win it again, unfortunately.
Was it Ndamukong Suh was the last one to do it?
Well, he got second.
Oh, that's right.
The last one to do it was Charles Woodson.
Oh, and that was back in the early 90s.
A long time ago.
Yeah.
Jeez. Yeah. That's – I mean, and his odds are not that bad. I mean, as far as, like, gambling goes, I mean, he's plus 1,500. He's the fourth highest rankings.
They say plus 220?
For CJ Stroud is plus 220.
That's crazy.
Yeah, Bryce Young plus 380.
Yeah.
Caleb Williams plus 700. And your guy McCall from Coastal Carolina, I'm gonna have to throw $2 on it because it's plus 10,000. So I can't pass that up just in case something wild happens. So
let me tell you, he is fantastic. I mean, if I know they're not on TV a ton, if you have ESPN Plus, you can watch all their games. I mean, that young man, he's a fantastic human being, first of all, but he is an unbelievably gifted football player.
Yeah, he kind of ripped my heart out in that bowl game back in December. But
that was a great game.
Oh, yeah, until we got screwed by the refs. That they should be in jail for that.
I miss football. That's
unbelievable. I want that whole crew thrown in jail for at least 2 weeks. I'm not asking for much. 2 weeks.
That's it. See, that's the kind of anger we get to bring back.
Unbelievable.
With college football coming back.
I'm sure we'll get to NIU later in the show.
Oh, we definitely will. It's on the list, fella.
It has been a crazy offseason in college football. What do you think about all the craziness that is going on with the conference realignment?
Man, well, I first off have to say that I'm shocked that USC and UCLA were able to keep that whole thing quiet in the LA market. I don't understand. I know that it's been like, there's been rumors, like people like me who are in this and do this daily, like you see the rumors and you hear the rumors, but there was never like, was there really much to it type of thing?
Yeah.
And then when it actually happened, you're just like, holy smokes. Like how in the world does the second biggest market in the United States, how are you able to keep that quiet for like, it's been in the works for 2 or 3 years now.
Yeah.
So that to me is crazy.
Nuts.
But I think the whole thing holding it up right now is obviously Notre Dame, whatever they decide to do. I think the big tell to me was the new Big Ten TV contract, that $350 million contract. I think to me that says that they're going to add at least 4 more teams, and I think Notre Dame is one of them, because
it's about time, Notre Dame. Get off your high horse and join a conference. We've been saying that for 5 years on this show.
I'll respect them more.
And the reason I say that is because NBC and Peacock are a part of that deal. So, and plus Notre Dame has a ton of rivalries with teams already in the Big Ten and with USC. So I think that's going to happen. So I personally think USC, Stanford, Oregon, and Washington are going to end up in the Big Ten.
Wow.
That's just from the things I've been hearing. One thing that will shock a lot of listeners who don't really follow. You guys know how close I am linked with the UConn football program, just from my podcast and everything that I do. But one thing I can say is UConn is going to be joining the ACC in the future. Just yeah. So UConn football is going to get to where they need to be when it comes to joining the conference. And I think we can all agree that in all the other sports, UConn is already there. But
yeah, well, you heard it here first, folks.
Yeah.
Breaking news.
Then
the
interesting thing is going to be what happens between the Pac-12 and the Big 12. Do the teams, say Cal, Utah, some of those other teams there. What happens with them? Where do they end up? We'll have to see. I mean, we've all heard the rumors that those teams are going to go to the Pac-12, and Washington State and Oregon State are going to end up in the Mountain West. But at this point, it's a crapshoot. I mean, until Notre Dame makes the final decision, then all the dominoes will start to fall.
Yeah, it's just a process. Like, trying to figure it out now is just silly, because it's going to change a million times between now and then anyway. So with all the conference realignment stuff going on, we also have all the NIL stuff going on, and you're seeing schools, I believe, like Houston set it up, like a couple other schools set it up. So like each player is going to make $35,000 for name, images, and likeness. Where do you sit at with this? Are we still just in the wild, wild west side of the NIL stuff? Do you see any of this? I feel like at some point it's got to find its balance. Like, water's going to find its level, right? I feel like right now it is just craziness, but I feel like it's one of those things that are going to eventually shape out. Where you sit on this stuff?
I think one of the main things with that is there was no policing of it at the beginning. So now you can't really just sit there and say, you can't just like throw rules on it. In my opinion, I think that would be wrong. I think it's an open market and a free economy to just, guys, what is your worth? Kind of like professional sports. Like, where do you fit on that level of what is your value? Now, I'm against what they're doing now when it comes to high school recruitment, them just paying 5-star athletes an obscene amount of money. Like Arch Manning. Here's a story for you. Arch Manning got offered $15 million from Ole Miss. This is an alleged story. I can't confirm this, but the sources that I have, I would say, are pretty credible. Gets offered $15 million from Ole Miss. Now, Lane Kiffin is the coach at Ole Miss, obviously, former coach at Tennessee. So Peyton Manning doesn't like Lane Kiffin at all because of how he ran Tennessee into the ground. Allegedly, Peyton Manning told Arch Manning, his nephew, "I will give you $15 million not to go to Ole Miss."
That's crazy. So all that means to me is that Texas paid him $20 million.
Well, allegedly, it's only 13. But
still insane.
But here's
he hasn't played a snap of football in college.
Could you imagine being 17 years old, knowing your 13 mil is coming to you?
Here's the kicker. Here's the kicker too. Allegedly, his recruitment is still open. Alabama allegedly offered him $11 million. Georgia offered him $12 million. And Kirby Smart has been on the record saying that this isn't over. Texas has a QB this year who was the number 1 ranked player in his recruiting class, Quinn Ewers, who we'll wait and see how good he is.
Was he the one that went to Ohio State?
Is he a senior in high school?
Yeah, he's going to be a senior. Yeah.
Oh my goodness! I thought he was playing this year.
No, Clint Ewers.
I guess he would have been. He would have been like in the Heisman odds. That's insane.
Yeah. Was Quinn Ewers the kid that went to Ohio State for like 2 weeks?
No, he went to Ohio State for the whole year last year, knowing that he was going to transfer to Texas. He literally went to Ohio State just so he could create a brand and make more money on NIL. That's literally what he did.
That's right.
Imagine going to high school just knowing that you're worth $15 million.
Yeah.
And you still have to go to your senior year.
You'd have to lock me in a padded room.
Well, I just wouldn't go to school.
No. You're driving Lamborghinis to school.
That'd be amazing.
Well, Andy's a Manning, so he doesn't even need it.
Yeah, I guess
it's probably not really going to change much.
Yeah.
I mean, he's been rich.
Right.
That's fair. That's why. Yeah, I don't know. You always hear coaches talk about it, and they're like, yeah, we're just kind of like figuring it out every day, like it's just this whole NIL landscape is just nuts. I mean, and I obviously, Bobby, both you and I have worked around, Division I, college basketball, side of things. And like, you've seen those athletes struggle and, having to scrounge up, $7 to go to McDonald's, because we ran out of per diem money, or splitting, a pizza and, saving coupons out of the garbage and stuff like that. So I'm glad to see that, even the schools, like I think it was Houston, where it says like every athlete, it's not just the football team, it's the women's basketball team, the, swimming team, like everybody's going to have this opportunity. You're going to do NIL deals. You're going to, do the commercials and all that. I'm so happy to see that these kids who you've seen how many hours these kids are putting into their sport and how much money they're making for the school, that they're going to be able to not have to, borrow money from a manager or, have parents send money, for food, basic necessities. But like,
Right.
I do feel like it's just insanity right now. And at some point we're going to have to be like, all right, we got to come in and police something here, add some sort of stipulations.
No, I mean, I agree with you. I'm all for it. I think
Absolutely.
I mean, for years, we've seen how much money the schools have made off these athletes. So it's only right. I mean, there's no reason why an athlete shouldn't be able to sell their jersey or their shoes or whatever it may be, or sell autographs, whatever. I mean, there's no reason why that shouldn't be allowed. There's no reason why you shouldn't be able to have a commercial with your local doctor or local heating and cooling company or whatever it may be. There's no reason why you shouldn't be able to do that. And that's what an NIL was originally set up for. And it's turned into something completely different. I mean, there's still
way different.
There's still guys doing that, guys and gals doing that. And and it's great. And that's what it's there for. But the boosters at the schools are what's ruining it.
Yeah, that they're the reason that the NCAA is going to have to come in and say, like, okay, now we have to put in rules because Ole Miss is offering $15 million and, Alabama, their boosters are offering this. And then, Texas Tech's boosters are doing like that. It's insanity right now. So, but it is what it is.
Let's play a little game we call back or not back. So we'll name a few schools and you tell us if you think they are back or not. And I'll start with Texas.
Oh, I love this debate. Texas is never back. They're just
because who was the quarterback? Didn't they won a bowl game and he said we're back?
Sam Ehlinger, I believe it was Sam Ehlinger. I think that's who it was.
Sam Ehlinger.
Yeah, I think that's who it was.
And then I think they lost to Maryland in the opening game the next season. Maryland stinks at football. Because I bet Texas so hard that week and they got killed.
Texas, trust me, in the field that I'm in reporting on college football, Texas fans are the most difficult to deal with. I'll just say that.
I bet.
Tennessee is a close second. But
yeah, well, I'm not going to argue with you there. Miami, is the U back this year, or is it going to be another year or two?
I'll say they're back, but definitely next year. I mean, I think this year they definitely will compete in the ACC, even going to the ACC title game. I think that's very doable. I'll say back, but I think next year and the following year is when they can really compete at a national level.
Officially back.
Sound like Chris Berman.
Yeah.
Back. Florida State.
Oh boy, not back.
After losing the number one player.
The issue for Florida State, they just don't have an identity. I don't know what they're doing. I don't know if they know what they're doing. But when you're in the ACC, especially in the state of Florida, they've had such a hard time finding a quarterback ever since Jameis Winston left. And I mean, the name of the game, you have to have a quarterback. I mean, if you don't have a guy, I mean, there's got to be a guy in the state of Florida that they can find who can play the quarterback position at an elite level in the ACC. And for some reason, they just haven't been able to do it. And it starts there. And they've had a lot of other issues, but I mean, it starts there.
As a Florida fan, I love hearing you say Florida State not back. All right, Kentucky.
Oh, they're back. Kentucky is for real. Mark Stoops is the best coach in the SEC, not named Nick Saban. What he's done at Kentucky. what he's done at Kentucky, if he did anywhere else, he would be a national title contender. It's just because he's at Kentucky and it's difficult. We've all
Calipari just said that.
John Calipari made that very clear.
I would argue that it's a football school now, but that's beside the point. They've had multiple 10-win seasons over the past 4 to 6 years. I mean, I think this year they can compete for the SEC East title. I think they're really, really good. The one thing I don't like about Kentucky, though, is Will Levis drinks mayonnaise in his coffee. I don't like coffee.
Throw him in jail.
But to do that is just disgusting.
Chance is really hoping that you say back on this one. Florida.
It's going to take a little time. Florida fans need to be. Billy Napier is a great coach. He's going to create a great culture, and they're going to be disciplined. And that was the issue with Florida over the past handful of years. They've just lacked so much discipline on the offensive.
They're like throwing people's shoes.
Yes,
in the middle of the game because you're a moron.
Yes. Florida will be back, but this year, I mean, they'll make a bowl game this year, but their first 4 games this year are very difficult. South Florida is improved. They open up against Utah. Then they got Tennessee and Kentucky in there too. I mean, if they start
lose to South Florida, I'm going to be so sad. Like, you can't lose to South Florida. Can't happen.
No, I agree with you. But I will say South Florida is much improved. I agree that Florida should win that game, but it wouldn't necessarily blow my mind if it happened.
Did you see the video of their new football complex? They built like a brand new no, Florida. They just opened their new football locker room. Oh my god.
Yeah, my brother works there, so I get all the inside, or not inside information. I shouldn't say that, but he's always sending me stuff about UF.
It's so cool. I just saw the video today.
It's amazing.
Well, I got to ask about my other team. How are my Huskies looking? We're going to make another run here and win the MAC again this year. Or what are we thinking on NIU this coming fall?
I absolutely think NIU is the favorite in the MAC. Ooh. Rocky Lombardi, and I will say, he is an unbelievable leader, just fantastic. Like, I've actually built a relationship with his dad, the Hall of Fame coach, Lombardi, and just what a great family. First of all, that's his great grandpa, by the way. But
yeah, I just wanted to clarify that for people who didn't know that Vince passed away.
But NIU played 71 freshmen or sophomores last year, so I mean, just they're. Like they bring the majority of them back. Now they do lose the MAC offensive freshman of the year in Ducker, the running back. He goes back home to Tennessee. He's going to go play for Memphis. But there's still plenty of guys there. I mean, they're going to be fine. The one big hit that NIU just had was all MAC wide receiver Trayvon Rudolph went down with a season-ending injury. He is an absolute stud at receiver, but they have a transfer from FIU, Shamar Thornton, who is basically a spitting image of Trayvon Rudolph. He's a quick, athletic wide receiver, so I think he's going to be able to step in and fill that role tremendously. So I know Husky fans are down about Rudolph being injured, as they should be, because he is a fantastic football player, but there's a guy in place there who's going to be able to do the same thing, in my opinion. And he's a 5th-year senior, so he's been there and done that as a football player. So, and NIU's defense is loaded. Like, from top to bottom, the whole defense is absolutely loaded. They return almost every starter. I was at their spring game this past April.
Down on the field. Yes, that was a lot of fun. I was very appreciative that they did that. Very jealous.
They have a transfer from Wisconsin, a defensive end who I stood next to, Isaiah Green May. who is all of 6'6". I mean, this was a grown man. I mean, I was blown away. And he made a play during the spring game where he like spun off the tackle and got to Lombardi and stripped the ball. And in the spring game, you can't touch the quarterback, but he stripped the ball without touching the quarterback. I mean, he's a freak.
That's what I like to hear. Yeah, that really kind of brought the mood. I didn't know that kid got hurt. I kind of missed that. So more breaking news here. Bobby just broke my heart.
That just happened this week, or late last week,
great.
I should say.
Not great, Bobby.
Yeah,
that's all. It sounds like, and I love what Hammock has done. He's phenomenal.
Oh, he's great. He's phenomenal.
Yes, and obviously, they built the indoor facility. I believe that opened up my senior year, might be my junior year. And obviously that they've taken some of the steps, and they went down to the year that they didn't win a single game. And that happens when you're rebuilding. And he said, like, it's going to be a process. They were walk-on university for a while, which I wasn't crazy about. But obviously what he has done in these, 3 years now has clearly worked. And I think
Absolutely.
that there's high expectations. So last year there was no expectations, right? And that's where I feel like for NIU, that's the big one. And we talked about, NC State, which is kind of funny because isn't Dave Doran still the coach still at NC State?
Yes, he is. He's on year 10.
NIU guy. Yeah, that's wild. But like, how are you going to perform now when you're expected to be, one of the best two teams in the MAC? And I think the MAC is a little bit down this year as compared to, in the past, but now you have that expectation where you are expected to succeed, and you're like they should be in Detroit for the conference championship. It's going to be a lot different pressure than last year where you were going into every game as an underdog. Now let's go see what you can do when you're looking at it from the other side.
Absolutely. I mean, they went from 0-6 in the 2020 COVID year to 9 wins last year in the MAC championship. I mean, that's a tremendous coaching job by Thomas Hammock. But I think it really boils down to Rocky Lombardi and the leadership he provided. I think he was an absolute game changer for that offense and for that program. And to have him back this year, but especially last year, he comes in from Michigan State. This is a guy who's played in meaningful games in the Big Ten. He beat Michigan when he was at Michigan State. So, I mean, this is a guy who's been there and done that as a player. So, I mean, like I said, they had 71 freshmen and sophomores play last year, but you have a quarterback who's just been through it and he knows what to do. And he comes from probably the number one football family ever, first of all.
Very recognizable name.
That helps. But I mean, the leadership he brings to the table, I think, and Thomas Hammock, first off, but from a player's perspective, I think he just set them off. And then, of course, when they beat Georgia Tech, I think that really propelled them into something special.
One of the best years of my year last year.
And this year they have another opportunity. They host Vanderbilt. And I know Vanderbilt's not great, but it's still an SEC team coming.
Yeah, it's still hosting an SEC school.
Yeah.
You're not going there.
They go to Kentucky. I mean, Kentucky's really good, but NIU can give them a run. They go to Tulsa. Tulsa is a decent AAC team. I think NIU
and anywhere on the road like that,
Yeah,
it's
I think NIU can and probably should win that game, but it all sets up well for them. And then the thing that I like is they host Central Michigan, I think Central Michigan is the next best team in the MAC West. The MAC West is very good. Every team in the MAC West went to a bowl game last year. But to host Central Michigan, they host Miami, Ohio, who is the big-time favorite out of the MAC East this year. So they got both of those at home. They go to Western Michigan. They go to Eastern Michigan, to Ohio, to Ball State. They host Toledo. So, the schedule sets up well for NIU.
That's what I like to hear.
So we know you're a big Coastal and UConn guy. How are they looking going into the season?
Man, Coastal is I think it's 10 wins or bust again. They lose a lot. They do. But they have Grayson Mccall back. And they have a lot of guys that most fans don't know about. They got a couple really good running backs and that are going to burst onto the scene. They got Sam Pinkney transferring in, wide receiver, who was at Georgia State. He was one of the number one wide receivers in the Sun Belt last year. He's coming home to Coastal. He's from that area. So that I think that's going to be huge. Like I said, they lose a lot defensively. They had a couple All-Americans on the defense over the past couple years. And so, I mean, there's going to be new faces there, but they've recruited at such a high level that they're going to surprise some people, I think. They open up the year against Army, and Coastal's issue last year defensively was stopping the run. So Army's definitely not the team that you want to play when you have issues stopping the run. So that game's going to be very interesting because Army's very good. That's one of the low-key great games of week one, Army at Coastal Carolina, because those are two really, really good G5 teams. And then you asked about UConn. I mean, I'm probably more invested in the UConn football program than anybody who doesn't live in the state of Connecticut. The whole partnership that I
there's no
that
doubt
I
about
have,
that.
The partnership I have with UConn and that university now is something that's just blown my mind. I never, ever thought that this would happen. But, like, I've been told stories I've interviewed multiple players on my show. I've interviewed multiple coaches from UConn. And they tell me, like, Jim Mora talks about you all the time. And, like, I've never met Jim Mora in my life. But it's, like, it's just an amazing thing. Like, I think – it's crazy how it's happened. I'm going to go see UConn play 3 times this year. I mean, I'm going to see him play at Michigan. I'm going to see him play at Ball State. Then I'm going to make a trip to Connecticut, hopefully. They're providing me tickets and, like, they're helping me out and everything.
Amazing,
I mean, it's an amazing thing. But to go to how they're going to look on the football field, the UConn is probably going to be one of the most unpredictable teams to gauge from the average fan, because, like, almost their entire roster is different, and it needs to be. Like I've said on the show, I mean, I watched every single minute of UConn football last year, and I'd be lying to you if I said it wasn't one of the most painstaking processes I've ever done in my life. But it has led to what I have now with the football program and with the fan base there.
For sure.
So it's they have a quarterback competition going on right now between 4 guys. Taquan Roberson transfers in from Penn State. Tyler Pumachu, he was their starter for a couple games last year as a true freshman. He really did some good things. He was the guy who led them to their lone win. Before he got hurt, they were playing at Vanderbilt when he tore his ACL, but they were going to win that game with him. He was playing fantastic, and he went down with that injury, and things kind of spiraled, and they lost on a last-second field goal. But then they have a true freshman, Zion Turner, who probably will redshirt this year, but he is going to be a future star. He is someone that college football is going to want to know about in a couple of years because he can do some things. And the wide receiving corp at UConn has some really, really talented guys. I had Nigel Fitzgerald. They're one of their number one wide receivers on my show maybe a month or 2 ago, and he's a 6'5" wide receiver. He's a quarterback's best friend. But we've become friends now. Like, we text each other all the time. Like, he's a great dude, and like, they're just I know how excited all those players are just because I talk to them, a handful of them frequently. They're just to have a guy like Jim Mora who obviously knows what he's doing.
Such a big name.
Absolutely. But their offensive coordinator, Nick Charlton, who I had the pleasure of having on my show, I'm like the first person to really interview him from like a national perspective. So that was huge for my podcast. But he's a 33-year-old offensive coordinator, but he was the head coach at Maine when he was like 30 years old. So, I mean, he's a young guy, and he is a rising star in the coaching profession. So, I mean, the sky's the limit for UConn. I mean, they open up week 0 at Utah State. Utah State's very good. The opening line for that game was 30 points, and UConn is not going to lose that game by 30 points. I guarantee that. I think it's gotten down to like 27, whatever it is. But
I'll take that.
Yeah, we're in. Say less.
That will be a game going into the fourth quarter, I promise you, because the UConn Huskies are going to battle and fight this year compared to what anybody has seen in the past handful of years. And I think you guys see I'm passionate about it, but it's
Oh yeah.
It's weird how it's happened. Like when I started
Right, because
my
it's so
podcast,
obscure. Like we live in Illinois, and like you're like the
Right.
biggest UConn guy I've ever met in my
right,
life.
like
and,
a little over a year ago when I started this podcast, I didn't know much about UConn football, honestly. And now I'm
Right.
like just 100% all in.
Do they at least still have UMass on the schedule so they can?
They do, and that's probably the game I'm going to go to in Connecticut.
That's the one you should go to. You probably end up on the field
Because
with Gator.
well, and it's an interesting thing too. I have a ton of UMass followers too, and I've interviewed a handful of their players, and like it's just really weird. I like have this Northeast, like huge Northeast fan base. I've never even been to the Northeast part of the United States. Like it's crazy.
We got to get on a shirt that just says like "I'm big in New England." I like that. So you've obviously said a couple of the games that you were planning on going to this year, and we've talked about it in the past. Like your goal is to get to a game at every college football stadium. What ones do you have cemented that you're going to catch a game at this year?
Week 0, I will be at in Champaign for Wyoming at Illinois. Well, it should be a pretty good game. Wyoming's been a bowl team for the past handful of years. I think Illinois is going to be much improved this year, where I think they can go to a bowl game this year. I'm excited for that one. Week 1, I'm still trying to formulate what I'm going to do there. Week 2 as well. Week 3, I'm going to UConn at Michigan. It has a 12 Eastern start, but then I'm going to hightail it out to Western Michigan at Pittsburgh that same day. They're in the evening. So that's going to be a fun one.
Dang. Wait, you're going from Ann Arbor to Pittsburgh in one day?
No. Ann Arbor to Kalamazoo.
Oh, okay. I thought you said
Western.
You were driving. I'm like, bro, you're not going to make it.
No. You're right. I would not make that.
I promise you will not make kickoff. But no, now that makes more sense.
Yeah, and there's a handful of other ones in there. I'm still putting it all together. Like I said, I'll be at the UConn at Ball State game. Plan on a handful of other ones in there too. But it's a great journey. It's the coolest thing to be able to just do something that you're passionate about like this. I mean, I stopped coaching, so I needed something to scratch my sports itch, and this podcast has turned into that. So
and it's cool because like your kids are young now, but like eventually once you're knocking more and more stadiums out, like they're going to be able to start joining you along this journey.
Absolutely.
And develop that fondness for the sport and kind of what's going on just by hanging out and hitting the road with you. That's so cool that you're doing this.
Absolutely. I can't wait till I can take my son to games when he's only 4. But
yeah,
so he's got a little bit longer, but it's going to be fun.
3.5 hours out of a 4-year-old is a lot to ask.
That's a lot to ask, right? He can sit through a high school basketball game. That's about it.
You got him for an hour, and that's about all you're going to get. Bobby, thank you so much for joining us, man. It is always great to have you on. Make sure that you check out the TNT College Football Podcast, wherever you get your podcasts, on Twitter at TNT College Foot 1. Make sure you check it out. And as you can tell from this interview, like we said, Bobby knows so much about college football. Bobby, we're glad that you took time to jump on with us here tonight. And we'll have to make sure we get you on about midway through. Maybe we'll plan on like a middle of October, early October podcast to kind of pick up where the season's going and all that great stuff. Anything else you want to tell the listeners where they can find any of your stuff?
You hit it already at TNT College Foot 1 on Twitter. That's where you can see all my program breakdowns that I'm doing. Like we said at the beginning of the show, I got less than 20 left, but you can go through my Twitter and see. You can even DM me. I can send you whatever team you would like. It's been a heck of a journey with that. It's a lot of fun, but yeah, then feel free to follow me personally at coach_bwill. And love to talk college football, but also basketball. I mean, I'm a former college basketball
Yep.
coach. So, I mean,
maybe that's the next
me.
branch of the website, the college basketball breakdown. That's 355 programs, though.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, man.
that ain't going to happen.
One a day for the
Yeah,
year.
no kidding. Seriously. But Bobby, thanks again, man. We appreciate you jumping on. Everybody make sure that you go check out the TNT College Football Podcast. Thanks for hopping on with us, Bobby.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys.